The economic damage from the Iran war is already spreading, and the first place people feel it is inflation. In the United States alone, inflation moved from 2.4% in February to 3.3% in March. That is a two-year high. Core inflation is now at 2.6%. On paper, that number may still look manageable. In reality, it shows how much pressure is already building inside the system. The reason is simple. Energy costs shape prices across the whole economy. When oil and fuel become more expensive, that pressure spreads into food, shipping, transport, manufacturing, and everyday services. Households end up paying more for a wide range of needs. Businesses also face rising operating costs. As that pressure builds, consumption slows and overall demand starts to weaken. That pressure is now building faster because the Iran war has disrupted supply and Trump's Hormuz blockade has tightened the market even further. The reaction was immediate and crude jumped by 10% in a single day. West Texas Intermediate moved above $100 a barrel. Brent crude also rose above $100. These price moves quickly shape inflation expectations, business planning, and household spending decisions. At first glance, you might think the big oil producers in the Gulf should be celebrating. Higher oil prices usually mean higher revenues. That is how this story normally works. But this crisis is hitting in a different way. The problem is no longer just price. The problem is getting barrels out. Iran controls Hormuz, and with the United States adding its own blockade pressure, the route out of the Gulf has become even more difficult. Gulf producers are now trapped behind the choke point at the exact moment the world is desperate for supply. That pressure quickly spreads into government budgets, damaged infrastructure, and the financial stability of the Gulf economies. For Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, prices above $100 a barrel would normally look supportive because their fiscal break-even oil prices are about $82 and $83 a barrel. The market is already above those levels, but their budgets depend on more than price alone. They also depend on moving enough oil out to the world. Hormuz is under pressure from both sides. Iran controls the strait, and the United States has added its own blockade pressure on top of that. That means producers in the Gulf are dealing with a route that has become extremely difficult to use at the exact moment global buyers need more supply. So even if oil rises to $150 or even $200 a barrel, the Gulf still takes damage if cargo cannot move in normal volumes. National budgets are built on a combination of price and exports. Once volumes collapse, revenues start falling fast. That is why this problem cuts much deeper than a simple price spike. Governments may be looking at a strong market on the screen while their real income drops on the ground because ships cannot move enough barrels out through Hormuz. This also changes who actually benefits from the crisis. The biggest winners are the producers with open shipping access and free navigation. Countries like Russia, Brazil, and Malaysia can still move their barrels to market. Europe, Japan, and Korea still need oil, and buyers will turn to whatever supply can physically reach them. That gives these producers a direct advantage while Gulf exporters remain stuck behind the choke point.
But there are many boats heading toward our country to fill up with oil and then go and take it. So they're not going to go through the Hormuz Strait. And we have much more oil than they have put together. And what's happening is boats are coming over here, filling up. We don't have to go through the Hormuz Strait.
And that is where the financial strain starts building. Gulf states still have spending commitments, budget targets, and oil-dependent economies to support. Once export volumes stay under pressure, the revenue squeeze becomes more severe for the countries that rely most heavily on steady oil flows. Saudi Arabia sits at the center of that pressure. The kingdom needs steady oil income to support its budget and keep its long-term plans moving. That becomes much harder when its biggest customer starts pulling back. China normally buys about 40 million barrels of Saudi oil a month. At current prices, that is roughly $4 billion in revenue. Now those purchases are expected to fall toward 20 million barrels a month, and with the blockade in place, even that number may be too optimistic. This is a direct hit to the kingdom's cash flow. China is Saudi Arabia's biggest and most reliable oil customer. When purchases from a buyer of that size start falling, the kingdom's revenue base comes under pressure. Saudi Arabia then has to rely more on smaller buyers whose demand is less predictable and more sensitive to price and market conditions. That leaves the country with less income stability at a time when it needs steady oil revenues to support its long-term plans. Pricing pressure is making the problem even worse. Saudi oil sold to Asia has risen to nearly a $20 premium over the benchmark price. That means buyers in Asia are paying far more for Saudi barrels during a period of shortage. For some customers, that may be acceptable for a while. For China, which has access to discounted Russian energy and other alternatives, this is another reason to move away from Saudi supply. Once those flows are redirected, winning them back may not be easy even after the war ends. At the same time, the wider Gulf energy system is suffering physical damage. Multiple oil and gas facilities across the GCC have been destroyed, and repair costs are climbing fast. Qatar's energy capacity is already 17% lower, and that shortfall is expected to continue for at least 3 to 5 years. This adds another layer of pressure across the region, because governments are dealing with weaker export revenues while also facing major reconstruction costs. For Saudi Arabia, this lands at the worst possible time. Mohammed bin Salman's Vision 2030 plan requires money, confidence, and continuity. Falling revenues, weaker export stability, and rising regional damage are putting that plan under pressure. As Beijing redirects its supply chains, the strain on the kingdom starts feeding into a much broader strategic shift. China is responding to this crisis in a very practical way. Beijing needs stable energy flows, manageable prices, and supply routes that are easier to control. That is why it is pulling more of its oil demand away from the Gulf and redirecting it toward countries that are easier to work with during a conflict like this. Russia is one of the clearest examples. It sits close to China, it already sells sanctioned energy at a discount, and it gives Beijing a large nearby source of supply. Brazil is also becoming far more important. In March 2026, Brazil doubled its oil supply to China and reached more than 1.6 million barrels a day. Malaysia is gaining from this shift as well, along with African producers like Angola and Congo. These countries are taking business that would otherwise have gone to the Gulf. The logic behind this move is straightforward. China wants suppliers that are geographically closer, politically aligned, and easier to access during a period of conflict. It also wants regions with less direct U.S. influence. That lowers strategic risk and gives Beijing more room to plan for the long term. For BRICS countries especially, this shift also carries a currency angle. Trade inside that system is likely being settled in RMB rather than dollars, which gives China even more reason to deepen those relationships. At the same time, Beijing has more reason to keep looking away from the Gulf, because the crisis is becoming harder to contain. Trump keeps raising the stakes in the blockade, and that increases the risk of Iran tightening pressure on Hormuz even further and putting more Gulf cargo at risk. From China's point of view, this makes the region harder to rely on for both energy and long-term planning. Beijing is putting more weight on energy generation at home. China's clean power industries accounted for about 1/3 of the country's GDP growth last year. That is a huge part of the economy. And because of the war, China is likely to move even harder into solar, hydro, wind, and nuclear power. The more domestic energy China builds, the less exposed it becomes to unstable oil routes and geopolitical pressure abroad. This goes far beyond oil shipments. Since 2018, China has increased its financing and investment push into the Gulf by nearly 50%. Chinese investments across the region now total nearly $270 billion. The biggest recipients include Iraq, Iran, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia. The kingdom alone has received about $82 billion, and more than $50 billion of that is still under construction. If supply chains keep breaking down and projects stop moving forward, Beijing has strong reason to freeze or halt major investments. That would leave the Gulf with weaker investment pipelines, slower infrastructure development, and a more uncertain long-term position. It would also leave the region with fewer obvious sources of replacement capital, at a time when the need for outside money is only getting bigger. The cost of this crisis is already rising fast. Gulf producers had already lost more than $15 billion by mid-March. By mid-April, that number is likely closer to $20 billion or even $25 billion. A UN study has already put the broader damage at more than $250 billion. If the conflict continues, GDP across the Gulf could contract by 3% to 10%. That matters because these economies still run on oil cash. Many Gulf states depend on steady energy income to support spending, subsidies, and social benefits. Kuwait is one of the clearest examples. The state provides child allowances, housing support, marriage grants, and pensions generous enough to cover far more than basic living costs. Once revenues fall and infrastructure damage rises, governments are pushed toward harder financial choices. They can cut benefits and spending, which risks public backlash at home, or they can borrow more to fill the gap. That path comes with its own cost, because interest rates are already high. More borrowing during a period of weaker revenues and rising reconstruction costs puts even more pressure on national budgets. The effects can then spread outward. Gulf states have long recycled large amounts of oil revenue back into U.S. assets through the petrodollar system. If their own economies come under enough strain, that flow can weaken. They may stop reinvesting at the old pace. They may also start reducing existing holdings to raise liquidity and protect domestic finances. That is where the risk starts reaching Washington directly. Saudi Arabia alone holds about $150 billion in U.S. treasuries. Together, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the UAE hold more than $300 billion in U.S. debt. If financial pressure forces them to unwind part of those holdings, the impact would move into American bond markets and add more strain to Trump's economy. China is already reshaping its supply chains, and once those flows move, they rarely come back the same way. So the real question is this: will China permanently shift away from Saudi oil? And if it does, will Gulf countries start selling their U.S. debt holdings? Let me know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to like and share the video. See you in the next one.